The U-turn on the Green Prosperity Plan comes after a great deal of flip-flopping. I mean, I could go through the list, but we've had all sorts of U-turns from Sir Keir Starmer. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? Why can't he stick to Labour's plan, Mr McFadden?
Well, we announced this plan 2.5 years ago at a time when interest rates were only 0.1%, basically zero. They're now 5.25%. And any of your viewers who've had to remortgage in the last year or so will know that that makes a huge difference to the cost of borrowing. And for the country, it means that the cost of borrowing is now £70 billion a year higher than when the plan was first announced. And as you approach the election, as you're writing your manifesto, we're going to have an election this year, it's really important to look at everything you've said in the past few years and ask yourself the question, does that fit with the economic circumstances of today or the ones 2.5 years ago?
But he's flip-flopped on so much, hasn't he? I mean, we've got flip-flopping on nationalising utilities, outsourcing in the NHS, flip-flopping on the support of trade unions, free movement, abolishing universal credit, supporting Jeremy Corbyn, then not supporting Jeremy Corbyn, abolishing tuition fees, universal childcare, rent controls, the ULEZ expansion. I mean, it's too many to mention. So the only conclusion that GBNews viewers and listeners can draw is that he simply doesn't have a plan, or at least not one he can stick to.
Well, I think you're reading out the Tory talking points there about not having a plan.
It was actually in Politico, this list.
Even after the change, that we announced a few days ago, we're still going to have GB Energy, a publicly owned energy firm that will help drive the transition to clean power. We're still going to have a national wealth fund to invest in things like making sure the country's got a steel industry in the future. We're going to have investment in our ports. We're going to have a plan to insulate more homes. We're going to have local power plans. There's still a lot in this plan that will create jobs, give us more energy security and be a good plan for the country.
Can I ask you a question about Tony Blair, who I knew you once worked very closely with, Mr McFadden? There's a suggestion in the Sunday Times today that he's heavily involved in Labour's operation. Just how involved is Tony Blair?
Well, I'm not aware that he is. I mean, I think he spends a lot of time in the Middle East these days. So I don't know that that's true. I read all sorts of reports about who's involved in what and who's up and who's down, and I don't recognise most of them, to be honest. What we are doing is getting on with the job. We've got an election coming up. We want to make sure that our manifesto is fit and ready. If we have to make some changes to things that we've said to make that the case, we'll do that. That's an exercise of leadership. It's a sign of strength that we do that. And when we go to the people, whenever the Prime Minister's got the courage to actually call an election, we want a manifesto that gives people hope and that everything in it can be delivered. And that's what we're going to do.
What kind of Prime Minister will Keir Starmer be? Because I'm a bit confused. Is he a Corbynista, having supported Jeremy Corbyn for all those years, or is he actually a Blairite? Because there seems to be confusion in the party as well. We've got on one hand people saying that he's not left-wing enough, on the other that he's too right-wing. Who is this guy, Mr McFadden?
He's his own man is the answer, Camilla. I've got to push back a wee bit on your stuff about U-turns. This Prime Minister we've got is a walking, living U-turn. He's only there because the Tories had to U-turn on a disastrous budget. It's the only reason he's Prime Minister. They didn't even vote for him. He's the personification of U-turn.
Well, let's talk about another U-turn. Abolishing the House of Lords was something that Sir Keir Starmer announced some years ago. Apparently you don't want to do that anymore. Maybe you just want to limit the number of hereditary peers. So that's a major U-turn, isn't it, for Labour?
Well, look, let's see what the manifesto has got to say about that.
Are you going to abolish the House of Lords then?
But we haven't published our manifesto, and when the Prime Minister eventually works up the courage to stop hiding from the election that's got to come, we'll publish our manifesto, and there'll be definitely something about the House of Lords in that.
But would you like to see the House of Lords abolished, Mr McFadden? What's your personal opinion?
I'm really sorry about the earpiece.
Don't worry, you're looking great.
The House of Lords is indefensible in its current form. It has to be changed, and we'll set out the plans for doing that in our manifesto when the Prime Minister eventually calls an election.
Final question, Mr McFadden, and thank you for bearing with that earpiece. I've been in that position myself where the earpiece has come out. Do you think it was a mistake for Keir Starmer to politicise the tragic murder of Brianna Ghey? I mean, he wasn't meant to refer to somebody in the gallery. It's clearly stipulated in Erskine May that that's a no-no. Why did he do that?
No. I don't think your summary of that is right. I don't think that's what Keir Starmer did. I think the big lesson from that Prime Minister's questions exchange last week is that when the Prime Minister throws a shot like that across the dispatch box, you've got to remember this debate has real people and real lives at the heart of it, and I think that is the big lesson from last week.
OK. Pat McFadden, thank you for bearing with your earpiece and for us this morning. It's been really great to speak to you. Thank you very much.